3, discuss the proposed 2015-2016 budget. Aaron?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Before we get started, I'd just like to introduce my staff I have over here. It's Jennifer Smith, the accounting manager. And then about a month ago, we had Marlon Becker join our team as a senior accountant, and so he has also helped work on this. Get started, just a very generic overview tonight, not getting down into the details of any of that. We'll do that over the next 3 meetings, but just go over a few items. There's some dates that we have to be aware of according to the Municipal Budgeting Act, and so 30 days prior to the new year, we're required to give you a copy of the budget. You guys have received that this past Friday, both electronic and their print versions available if you have the pictures up. We're required 15 days prior to the beginning of the new year to have a budget hearing, which is currently set for the May 12th meeting. And 5 days prior to that, we must advertise. And then the budget approval has to happen no later than 7 days prior to the new fiscal year. Our timelines here, as I already said, you did receive that draft on May 1st. We're going over the initial overview tonight. There will be special meetings on the 7th, 11th, and 12th. And we tentatively asked for your budget approval to be on May the 14th at the rescheduled regular meeting for the second meeting in May.
Are those 3, 7, 11, and 12 all at 5 o'clock?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Yes, ma'am.
And the 14th is the regular meeting?
Yes, ma'am. It's intended to be the second meeting, and it'll be the normal thing. Start at 5, study session over there in the basement, 6:30 regular meeting.
That because we're going to have several out of town in one week.
Yes. And if we do need to have another meeting, we can have one the last week of May, which we talked about. We haven't scheduled that yet, and we'll see if we need one or if we want one. We will have another meeting after that, which will be the regular meeting in June, which is June the 2nd. We're trying to get the budget approved in May so that we can move on to other things like audit and uploading the new budget and those kind of things. And then also, because we don't ask for the emergency on the budget, it doesn't become effective for 30 days. So it's important for us to get it approved if we can in May.
Okay, so our schedule is May 7th. We plan to review the Enid Economic Development Authority, as well as General Fund, Health Fund, and EMA, Advanced Development Authority. May the 11th, we'll discuss Mill Lake Golf Course, Woodring Airport, CDBG, all the police and fire funds, and the Transit Authority. And then May 12th, finish up with the ECCH and all the capital projects and capital funds that are managed by engineering with approval on May the 14th. Here's the budget summary, which is what is advertised in the paper. As you can see, this year we are planning a $9.6 million deficit in spending. There are a couple of items that are a couple of contributing factors to that. There are several of these funds that have fund balances, and we are projecting to spend some of that fund balance for specific projects, such as Airport has a nav aid movement as part of their project that's not going to be finished this year. They have the money available in their fund balance to spend it. That's part of their deficit. Also, and that would be GO bond spending, and police has a live firehouse that they've saved up for that they want to spend. That's part of their deficit spending. The other part of the deficit spending is in EMA. There's a few factors that make that up. It's budgeted about a $5.2 million deficit in EMA. About 1.6 of that is what we're projecting to still have to spend on the Lahoma Courts project to finish that out with Hunt Properties at Cleveland and Garriott. $2.97 million is an increase in capital expenditures due to some road projects that we'll go through. And there's about a $700,000 increase in necessary equipment for replacement needs that are there that was currently not funded this year. Talk a little bit about general fund. Overall, we have $44,363,220 revenue. That's balanced with expenditures, so there's no net effect on general fund this year. The overall revenues are a decrease of $438,000 in this budget that we presented to you. There's two factors that are contributing to that decrease. One is the Pegasus funding is not coming back in again this year of $380,000, and then there's just some reduction in grant funding across the board, as we've already seen with CDBG and that funding, that there's just not as much available. So those are the two contributing factors there in general fund for the decrease. The expenses, you can see, are balanced with the revenue. Personnel is about 9.7%, or 9.7 million. Contractual is 3.7. Maintenance and operations 1.6. Equipment 521. Transfers to police and fire 14.4. Other funds 688,000, and sales tax transfers of 13.68. Go through those out of comparison year over year. So this is the current year we're in red, and blue is what we're projecting next year in the budget that's before you. There's an overall decrease of 1.288, excuse me, overall in expenditures. Personnel, there's slight reduction based on some evaluations of staffing and some reductions in health and retirement benefits for employees. The biggest decrease right there in contractual services is the removal of the comp plan at 400,000. That's not in there again for next year. M&O, there's a slight increase as for some specific planned repairs and maintenance that had not been in there, replacement of some equipment that's being used, and some significant improvement or maintenance items at parks. Very detailed, lined out, line by line. You'll see as you go through the Parks and Rec department that those are all in there. The transfers out is the majority of what's in general fund. The total transfers out are 64%, and of that, besides sales taxes, is where everything goes out. CIC, EPTA, fire and police are the exact same transfer amount as the current fiscal year, no change in funding there. EDA, there's an increase of $20,000, which has to do with Mike Cooper's contract. This current year we're in, we budgeted for 10 months. We had a rollover encumbrance from the previous year, 2 months. This year we have the whole 12 months in there, so that's the reason for that increase. EEDA has a $34,000 increase, and that has to do with the new sales tax incentive for the Enid Travel Plaza. And golf's transfer has been reduced by $53,000, mainly based on personnel and the changes that were made across the city. EMA revenue is about a $1.9 million increase. There's a couple of items that make that up. One is we have budgeted in here the reimbursement from hot properties for the Lahoma Court projects. So that is the increase. There's also in here a decrease in water overall, which is a cumulative of two things. We have the set increase that is set for January, and then the reduction in water usage by Coke. And so that the total of those two offset to only bring down water revenues by $1 million in our projection for next year. Expenses for EMA is about a $5.4 million increase. Personnel is up about $610,000. Last year the staffing was budgeted at 90% in this fund. It's at 100% this year. This fund also has gained a few positions that were previously part of general fund. Contractual operations has gone up about $493,000 due to some equipment rentals, dozer and compactor, and some maintenance that has to go with those pieces of equipment. And we have an increase in utilities and water royalty payments as they just continue to go up every year. Maintenance and operation went up about $367,000 due to a couple of factors. We budgeted some software and some roll-off containers in capital replacement previously, and had not been caught or picked up in the maintenance and operations, and it was picked up there this year. We spent this year about $185,000 on solid waste containers, so that's one of the biggest increases in this budget. Equipment, we specifically needed some vehicles, roll-off truck, and a mini excavator. Last year there was no money funded in the capital asset replacement for this fund. Our debt service went down $1.3 million as we paid off the fees note, the 2012A note. And then transfers is where our significant difference is. The transfers increased by $4.57 million. And general fund is the only one here that stayed at the same funding as last year. The main differences that make up the increase are $1.6 million being transferred to EEDA for the Oklahoma courts, and then $3.63 million for CIF, which is a bunch of projects that we'll get to on the 12th. And then just some other less significant increases and decreases between the other funds based on the projects that were presented to us to include in the budget. So, is there any questions on the general overview?
We're gonna let you off the hook tonight.
I was gonna say, we're gonna have lots of meetings, so.
No, I got a list, but not tonight.
Thank you.
Item 4, 2015 first quarter workers' compensation review.
Good job.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager. This is the first quarter update for workers' compensation. Bottom 5. The first quarter was kind of an unremarkable quarter. The numbers are going to look a little surprising, but there's nothing that we can't explain and that isn't expected to happen. There were 14 injuries, and that's what might look a little surprising to you, 14. Out of those 14, I think 3 were actually significant injuries. The remainder of those were 1 or 2 minor visits, and they were taken care of, like a sprained ankle, a foreign object in the eye. That required 2 visits because we wanted to get the employee to an ophthalmologist. One of the back strains was a result of a motor vehicle accident, and that took a little extended care and some physical therapy, but that driver is back to work without restrictions. One of the back injuries resulted in some prescription meds back to work, and another one was a couple of weeks of light duty back to work. Those are the 3 that I consider significant injuries. The upper back injury was evaluated and treated out of an abundance of caution due to the mechanism of injury. How the employee was injured. He was a cleat trainee that took a pretty significant tumble during his training. And just when people hurt their backs, we just want to make sure that they're in good shape. So this is your comparison. Again, you see the numbers are slightly up, but not anywhere that raises any red flags for me or makes me too concerned about a negative trend. We're happy to entertain your questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Item 5,